Trust in God with all your heart and do not rely solely on your own understanding. Seek His will in everything you do, and He will show you which path to take. Sharon Milliman had two near-death experiences, one at the age of 13, which was a brief experience due to drowning in a pool, and the second, a deep experience that happened in 2005 due to a lightning strike. The account of the second experience in the words of the experiencer. One day in midsummer of 2005, I was sitting on a concrete step behind the house, talking to my friend on a cordless phone. It started to rain. I could hear the sound of thunder in the distance. About 5 minutes after the rain started, there was a loud roar, and immediately, a lightning bolt struck the right side of my body. A very severe and bone-piercing pain spread through my body, and I collapsed. The lightning strike also caused the power transformer in front of our house to fail, and the entire neighborhood was without electricity for 4 hours. I remember that I was both in shock and had a strange feeling. The pain in my chest and arms was truly unbearable, and at that moment, I felt that my soul was rising and leaving my body. I was floating in the air and looking around from above the house. Everything seemed strange to me, and nothing appeared to be right. Everything, even the air, had a yellowish glow around it. I realized that the furniture was not mine, and the curtains were not mine either. I was wondering to myself, where is my husband? Where are my children? Although there was no electricity, I was hearing a sound similar to an old radio program. At this point, I was no longer just floating, I was moving from room to room, looking for the source of the sound, but I could not find it. It seemed to me that time had stopped and that all movements had slowed down. Then I was transported to a completely different environment. I was among pink and golden clouds that were very beautiful and fluffy. I felt a strong and profound sense of peace and complete love. It was as if every pore of my body had opened up, absorbing all this love and peace. I was resting in this deep, beautiful love, feeling whole and completely accepted. However, I still had no idea what had happened. In these clouds, I was moving horizontally, I did not feel that I was going up or down. I could sense the presence of a very great being around me, surrounding me. This presence was full of overflowing love that poured love over me and within me, a love that I have no words to describe. Even now, as I speak about it, my eyes fill with tears. Then, 2 men appeared on either side of me. They were young, around 20 to 30 years old. Their hair was blonde, and their eyes were blue. The clothes they wore were ivory-colored robes. A kind of radiance emanated from them, and it seemed as if joy and happiness were flowing from every cell of their being. The robes they wore had many details, such as fine texture, softness, and small folds. I do not even know why these details mattered, but I both noticed them and still remember them. At first, I thought these two must be angels, but very soon, I realized who they were. These 2 men were my brothers who had died when they were very young, Michael and Stephen. We were very happy to see each other, it was like a family reunion. Both of them resembled my father, and I knew that if my father saw them, he would be proud of them. They took me from within the clouds to a beautiful garden, and to the left, there was a magnificent city. As I looked around, I noticed that the colors were very vibrant, the air was very clean and pleasant, and I could hear the singing of birds and the sound of a flowing spring. The place was full of flowers and trees, and I could feel a soft and pleasant breeze. As I stood in this extraordinary place, I could still feel the presence of that very great being surrounding me, pouring love into me. I felt an incredible sense of joy. The only thing I could do was stand in awe and amazement, enjoying all this beauty and the love that surrounded me. At that moment, I was given the knowledge that I had died and was entering heaven. This knowledge and awareness were imparted to me as a simple truth, without any feeling of fear, doubt, or anxiety. I felt weightless, and it was a very pleasant feeling. Gradually, people began to gather around me to support and help me, and my life review began. Everything I had ever said or done was shown to me. Not only were my brothers with me during this time, but I also continued to feel the presence of that great being, whom I knew was God. A group of people also came and showered me with love. I knew that I recognized them and that they recognized me, but I did not know from where. They were from different periods of time, yet somehow, they seemed to be part of my family, and they had all come to support me as I watched the film of my life review. It was truly like watching a movie, and there was absolutely no judgment or condemnation. It was at that moment that I realized God does not judge us, it is we who judge ourselves in His glorious presence, as our lives are displayed before us. The only thing God did during the review of my life was to continue loving me. Not a single word was exchanged, and in the blink of an eye, my life review was over. After my life review ended, a deep, calm, and masculine voice said, "What you have sent out into the universe will return to you, and this is God's law. It is not called punishment or reward. Good deeds have good consequences, and bad choices and actions have their own consequences." As I stood in the garden, I once again noticed the beauty and radiance of the colors of the flowers, trees, and grass. The colors were more vivid and brilliant than anything I had ever seen. The air had a sweet and fragrant scent, so pure and fresh. Touching the grass felt cool and pleasant. Birds were singing in the trees, and I saw a stream where the flowing water shimmered like diamonds in the sunlight as it moved over the rocks. I also heard music, more beautiful than anything I had ever listened to before. I realized that everything there had its own sound and resonance: the trees, the leaves, the grass, the stones, the flowing water, the birds, each had its unique melody. And when all these sounds combined, they created the most magnificent symphony imaginable. Even more incredible was that everything in heaven was engaged in praise and worship of God through its sound and resonance. This sound radiated from within everything, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. Even now, after all these years, sometimes when the wind moves through the leaves, I can hear that heavenly sound in my mind, and my soul feels uplifted and healed again. There is no concept of time in heaven, so I don't know how long each part of my journey lasted. On one hand, it felt like everything happened very quickly; on the other hand, it seemed as if time had stopped. It was as if a vast source of knowledge and awareness had been connected to my mind, and an immense flood of understanding flowed into me. Even before I could form proper words to ask questions, I was instantly filled with answers. I felt an overwhelming sense of joy and enlightenment as the meanings and reasons behind everything became clear to me, one after another. Everything was so simple and logical. I remember at one point saying, "Oh, so that's what it was all about. How fascinating. God, you are truly incredible. We are the ones who make everything so complicated." I also remember looking down at my spiritual body and realizing that I still had a form that looked just like my earthly body. I was even wearing the same clothes, and my long shoulder-length hair was just as it had been. I could see my jean shorts and my legs, but I noticed that my body was much lighter than in the physical world, and I felt a sense of weightlessness and floating. I was glowing, and yet, how I looked no longer mattered to me. I know I've said this many times, but all I felt was love and complete acceptance. I still felt like myself, I was still me, just without a physical body. And that was incredible. There were people everywhere, and everyone looked young and healthy, no one was sick. I saw homes in different places, including buildings with healing pools. I was given the understanding that those in these pools were souls who had experienced difficult or sudden deaths and had not yet realized they had passed. They were brought to these places, where angels, teachers, and guides helped them adjust to their new environment. There were also homes specifically for souls who had passed away as infants or young children, where they were cared for and continued their spiritual growth. I saw places that looked like enormous libraries filled with thousands upon thousands of books on every subject imaginable. There were schools for spiritual learning and many other different places. Then, Jesus came toward me. He was tall and incredibly beautiful. His hair was dark, curly, and very long, down to his waist. His skin was deep in tone, and his eyes were warm, fluid brown. His smile melted my heart. He told me that he loved me and had been with me every day of my life. He said that he had never left me and never would. He told me I had nothing to fear. I could only stare at him, completely speechless at his beauty. Then, I walked toward the edge of the garden, where I saw what looked like a narrow valley filled with trees. Sunlight streamed through the branches of tall oak and pine trees. I noticed a fallen tree trunk near a small spring, with tiny flowers growing around it in different spots. I went to the tree trunk, sat down on it, and listened to the gentle flow of the water. The air was pure and light, and I could hear birds singing. When I turned my head, I saw a man sitting at the other end of the tree trunk beside me. I knew that he was God. Whether it was the existence of God is a personal perception and opinion of the experimenter. The story continues. His hair was dark, shoulder length, and he had a neatly trimmed, short beard. His eyes were blue and beautiful, and his smile radiated joy. He was wearing a white robe and sandals. We sat on the tree trunk for a long time, talking together. Then, he became silent for a moment and, in a gentle tone, asked, "If it were just you and me in the world, what would you do?" I didn't understand his question, so I didn't respond. He repeated, "If it were just you and me in the world, what would you do?" I said, "I don't know what you mean." He patiently explained, "No parents, no children, no spouse, no friends, just you and me, no one else." I felt unworthy and said, "If it were just you and me, I would drive you crazy with my questions." He was so patient and kind, smiling at me. His smile was so gentle and soothing that my feelings of unworthiness began to fade away. He motioned for me to follow him and showed me the world. In that place, there was no one else, no people, no buildings, no cars, no animals, no trees. There was nothing except gases that were rainbow-colored and swirling around, and bright stars that sparkled like diamonds, with planets orbiting them. It was an incredibly beautiful and vast sight. I had never truly understood how vast the universe really is. It seemed that in just a moment, we were back, sitting on the same tree trunk again. He asked me once more, "If it were just you and me in the world, what would we do?" I couldn't find the right words to answer, but he was waiting. I was staring at an oak tree, observing every detail of the tree's trunk, the veins of life within its leaves, and the roots beneath the ground. What I saw wasn't just a tree, but all the individual parts that made up the tree. I saw how each part played an essential role in the life of that tree, and how the tree itself played a vital role in its surroundings. I realized how everything is interconnected, and how each part, no matter how small, is important. Nothing is insignificant. I was captivated by this scene for a few minutes, and I understood that this perspective, this attention to detail, was exactly what God had planned. It was a significant part of what God wanted me to comprehend. Finally, I answered. I had no idea why I gave that answer because I had never read the Quran in my life, and I had never seen a Quran or known anything about Islam. But I said, "God, the 100th name of you in the Quran is this: God is everywhere, God is nowhere, and God is within me." He said, "Yes, that's right." Later, I spoke to one of the professors of Islamic mysticism about my experience and how I had understood the 100th name of God in my experience. He explained to me that the Quran only mentions 99 names of God, and the 100th name is written in a cryptic form, and not everyone has access to it. He asked how I knew the 100th name of God, and I believed that it was God who placed that knowledge in my mind. As I was uttering the name, God was confirming that it was correct. Let's return to the continuation of the experience. He said, "Yes, that's right," and I looked at the tree again. I said, "God, you created this tree. You are in this tree, so when I look at this tree, I see you." He looked at me and said, "Yes." I thought of my parents and said, "God, you created my parents. You are in my parents, so when I look at my parents, I see you." Again, he said, "Yes." He encouraged me to think more deeply, and I began to reflect. There are people in the world who are merciless to others, people who have hurt me, and I don't care much about them. I said, "There are people who don't matter to me because they hurt others, but you created them. You are in them, so when I look at them, I see you." He smiled again and said, "Yes, that's right. Now, when you look in the mirror, what do you see?" My answer should have been something like, "I see myself, I'm not special, just me." But when I looked into his beautiful eyes, all those feelings dissolved and disappeared, because I saw his deep love for me. So I said, "God, you created me. You are in me, so when I look in the mirror, I see you." He said, "Yes, that's right." He seemed happy and content. I could feel the joy and deep love surrounding me, and I was completely immersed in his love. This was a huge realization for me. The magnitude of these revelations was beyond words. I felt like I could see God's beauty so easily in everything around me, but seeing God's beauty in myself wasn't as easy. Even today, I still have to remind myself that I am unique and beautiful. Each of us is unique to God. He created us, and He is within each of us. He never makes mistakes and never creates anything worthless. To Him, we are all important, and we are all beautiful. He looks at all of us with perfect love. We are beings that may seem imperfect, but we are fully loved and accepted by God. What I had to learn was that true beauty comes from the soul within, and it never fades. It is eternal. But external beauty fades with time. I had to learn that my worth as a human being is not dependent on what others think of me or whether they are happy with me. I had to learn that true happiness doesn't come from external sources. Real happiness comes from the heart within me. I am here for God, and that's it. I am, from His perspective, perfect and valuable just as I am. I don't need to make others happy or satisfied. What God wanted me to know is that He is always happy with me, and what I need to do is to be happy and content with myself and find joy in life. I needed to stop worrying about what others think of me. Our conversation ended, and we began walking in the forest. On the way, we met two beautiful women in beautiful clothes who guided me to a calm, clear lake at the end of a tree-filled area. I knew these two women were angels. They started showing me something that I can describe as moving images of future events on Earth. One of these events was the September 11th incident, which happened in 2001, but the experience of Ms. Sharon was in 2005. We don't know why this was presented as a prophecy in her experience. Another event shown to me was the economic collapse of banks and the stock market in 2007. They showed me that in the future, we would once again use gold and silver coins for trade. They told me that a time would come when we would return to the barter system for commerce. They showed me many natural disasters, such as earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tornadoes, severe storms, and 6 massive tidal waves that would submerge lands. I saw one of these massive waves in Japan, another in Indonesia, and one in Chile. I saw a woman in Canada driving with her young son in a car when the flood caused them to veer off the road, and their car was submerged in water. Both of them were drowning, and angels in human form came to save the child, but the child had already passed out. However, they told me that despite this, the child would be saved, and so it happened. The woman later made and published videos on spiritual topics. They showed me how governments and leaders have destroyed peace and tranquility on earth and how corrupt they are. I saw the darkness surrounding these individuals. They showed me that many governments would be overthrown and massive protests would erupt in the streets. In one of these protests, I saw a man throw something explosive through the glass of a store. The sound of gunshots was heard. The angels showed me small spaces on earth that still contained light, which were called safe havens, mostly located in mountainous areas. They showed me how, by seeing black spiritual clouds around lands, I could find the locations of these safe havens. The last thing they showed me was a silver-colored band that divided America into 2 parts. I was made aware that this silver band was a river, and I assume it must be the Mississippi River. However, they didn't provide further details, except to say that this band would grow larger. The reality is that, to this day, whenever one of these events happens, I, like everyone else, am caught off guard, and only after the event occurs do I realize that it was the same scene that the angels had shown me. I don't really know why they showed me these scenes or what I'm supposed to do with this information. After this experience, I was in a state of trance and unity with God for about 6 months, and now I have a stronger faith than before. I'm not religious, but I've developed a much deeper connection with God. Sometimes I can see spirits or feel their presence. Many of my relationships have changed. For example, I separated and remarried. In the early days after the experience, I couldn't go to stores, churches, or crowded places because I could feel the energy of the people. Intense light, loud music, or dark colors make me feel sick. It seems like I attract lightning, and I've been struck by lightning 4 times. Sometimes the lights where I am flicker and fluctuate, and my phone calls suddenly get cut off. Immediately after the experience, I had so much energy that I didn't sleep for almost 11 days. I have always loved everyone and everything, and I still do, but now I'm a little more cautious because from my experience, I learned that whatever you send out to the world will be sent back to you. If you found this experience helpful and would like to see more similar content, please subscribe to the channel, share the video with your friends, and like it. We'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your support means a lot to us and motivates us to share more content. Thank you for being with us.